Schools Work podcast, a podcast for everyone in education. This show is brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. At SREB, we believe that every school has the potential to be great. Whatever you do in the school, whatever your job may be, let's talk about things that make schools work.
Welcome to our special episode of Making Schools Work podcast, where we talk to Pacesetter and featured presenters at our summer conference and learn about what are some of the practices and strategies and systems they've put together to reach high levels of improvement. With me today to introduce this episode is Richard Morrison, one of our senior leadership coaches at SREB. Hey, Richard, how you doing today?
Hey, Daniel. I'm doing great today. Glad to be with you guys.
Where are you talking to us from?
I'm from Brandon, Mississippi.
Brandon, Mississippi.
Yes.
And tell us real quick about your background. Well, before you became a senior instructional coach and
Uh,
senior leadership coach, what was your life?
My life's been in K-12 education.
And what type of jobs did you have out there?
Out there, you name it. I started coaching and driving a bus right out of college. And so was a math teacher. And then somebody talked me into being an administrator. So I was an assistant principal, then a principal, then an assistant superintendent. Also worked on the State Board of Education in Mississippi.
You've been at every level.
Yeah. Lots of other jobs in between. You know, when you get a leadership position, that also comes with other jobs you didn't really know that you were going to be in charge of. And so different jobs, especially as assistant superintendent.
So today we're going to be talking about the work you've done with Richland High School. Tell us where they're located and a little bit about that school.
Okay, they're in Mississippi. Our capital is Jackson, and they're a suburb outside of Jackson, Mississippi. It's in Richland, Mississippi. They're in a school district called Rankin County School District. It's a very high-performing district in Mississippi, always doing really well academically and extracurricular activities too in this district. So the expectations are very high for schools in this area.
So how long did you work with them? Have you been working with them?
I've been working with them for the past 3 years.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about how you started and what that experience was launching this partnership with Richland. Now, are they Richland High School or do you call them Richland High School?
They're called Richland High School.
Richland High School, but they have 8th grade or 7th grade also?
They have 7th and 8th grade on campus too.
Okay.
So that's their makeup. But this started out with a conversation with a superintendent in the district at lunch one day. It was a simple question. Well, Richard, what do you do now? And I was able to tell him some of the offerings that SREB has for schools. And we moved on to the CIR process because I've been involved in many of those in other
CIR stands for
Curriculum and Instructional Review. Yes. And so we started talking about that. And he and his assistant superintendent me and says, well, we have a school in mind for you. Says, we'd like for you to do this process with Richland High School. And the superintendent was a former principal there. So he was very aware of the dynamics of that school. But I think they were identifying Richland as they believed it could improve, that it was operating, at a very standard-based level, but they believed it could really improve.
And what was their attitude when you first started with them? What was their view of the work that when you presented what you were going to be doing?
Well, the attitude to begin with, and I don't want to say it was a bad attitude, but it was a very skeptical as to why are you coming here in my school? And what is this curriculum and instructional process review that I hear that I'm going to have done in my school? He was very apprehensive and looked as if, well, you're coming in to try to see what all we're doing wrong. And so it took several conversations and go through the process and show him that we were going to identify promising practices as well as opportunities to grow. And it was all going to be based on data. We were going to listen to the teachers. We were going to listen to the community members, the students, counselors. We were going to take data from every shareholder in that organization. And then we were just going to look at the data together and decide where are some areas that they could target to improve.
Excellent. So they're going to share their experiences making those changes and how they took a review of their curriculum and instruction and used it to transform all kinds of systems.
Yes.
So before we start the episode, I'd like you just to share a little bit about what you hope and what you think people listening can learn about based on your experience and what they've done. What do you think people can really take from listening to this school?
I think what I'd like people to take, and I think it's an easy takeaway, especially when you listen to the school, is how their attitude changed. It changed from being very skeptical and very protective of their school and their teachers to being very open and reflective and setting goals to where they could improve. They saw the data and decided, okay, let's have some courage. Let's be very open and transparent with all our shareholders, and let's find processes that can help our students in their student achievement in our school. So it took courage, but that attitude from skepticism to having courage to make changes is what I think people will see when they listen to them. And the data speaks for itself. Through this process, the data shows about all the increases that they've had. So
can you just summarize what are some of the things that you've seen them improve on?
Well, first of all, in Mississippi, you have an accountability rating, and they've seen their accountability rating rise consistently for the last 3 years. The first year, they had a big jump after the CR process, which, you say there was other factors too, because there was changing administration. They were doing some things, but then the second and third year, they also kept increasing, and they knew it was because of how they were paying attention to these areas identified in the review. So some of the areas, their accountability rating improved from, I believe they're on the cusp of being an A school in Mississippi. Their AP enrollment doubled. The proficiency in AP jumped over 30%. Reading proficiency increased, and math proficiency rose from 75 to about 82%, I believe. So they had multiple target points that they could see increases. Dr. Stewart, the principal, also used some surveys he sent out. And when they would make a change, he was constantly going back to find out from the students as to, well, how did this work for you when we changed this? And they were getting extremely high feedback, positive feedback from the students and parents about the changes that were being made.
Awesome. Well, let's listen to our conversation with Richland High School and learn about how they made those changes and what they did to have some incredible growth as a school. Thank you, Richard. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. Very proud of their work, and this is a great school that has a lot to offer.
Welcome back. This is Dan Rock, and I'm here with Jason Adair. Joining us today is the principal and assistant principal from Richland High School in Mississippi, Rankin County, Mississippi. How are you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you, as always. So I'd like to introduce Marcus Stewart and Heather Bryan. And Marcus, tell us a little bit about who you are and about your school, Richland Middle School. I said high school? No, it's a middle high school. Richland Middle High School.
Yes, sir. Well, I am Marcus Stewart. I just completed my 5th year as principal of Richland High School here in Richland, Mississippi. It's this middle-sized 4A school here in Mississippi. Our demographics are We're roughly 50% white, 28% Black, and 14% Hispanic populations. We are a Title I school with roughly 70% of our students receiving free and reduced lunch. We are a B school at the present moment with high expectations in relation to receiving that A designation because of the hard work of the administrators, counselors, students, and staff of Richland High School. Right about now, we are 719, which is about 16 points away from where we want to be an A school. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but at the present moment, that's where we are.
And what was your score how long have you been the principal there?
This is my 5th year. And when I started, the school had a rating of 654, which I inherited the rating of 654. And that rating actually dropped my first year here because that was 2020 during the pandemic. And since that time, we have rebounded. And again, as I stated a few minutes ago, we are now 719.
So some people may not be from Mississippi and not familiar with that. Can you sort of give us some of the outcomes over the past 5 years that you're proud of, that you feel that has translated into that holistic score?
Yeah, just in comparison from last year to where we are now, our reading growth for our lower quartile students last year it was a 45.4. This year it's a 56.4.
Okay.
Math proficiency is another area that we are proud of. In 2023, it was 55.9%, and currently it's 63.6%. So there are a lot of great areas that we're showing growth, and our students are performing hard, especially with math. Math is something that stands out a lot, as does our history proficiency.
So that's such a lot of growth, and it's come with a lot of work. And one of the reasons that you all are a Pacesetter school is because you've put in a lot of structures and a lot of processes to build that. So I'd like us to sort of go back to the beginning of this journey that you with SREB, and we often start with a curriculum instruction review.
Right.
And I want to introduce Heather Bryan also, who's the assistant principal. Heather, were you there when they did the CIR?
I had the unique experience to experience the CIR from a district curriculum perspective. And then I started as an assistant principal after it was completed. So the spring that Richland High School went through the CIR, I was on the district level. And then that summer, I was hired as an assistant principal. So I got the unique experience to kind of go through both sides of it.
So briefly, a curriculum instruction review is where a team of people from the district or from other schools look at assignments, data, observations, interviews, look at a variety of surveys, and analyze that data to give promising practices and areas of growth on instruction, aligned curriculum, career pathways and career alignment, culture of continuous leadership, and systems of student support. And so you received this report. So I'd like you to talk about what you learned from that experience and what it inspired you to do. Either of you, Marcus, you can go ahead, and Heather, you were there after it was, but you can still probably talk about what you learned from that report.
Yeah, as Heather mentioned earlier, she had a great perspective on the whole process as she was able to see it from the CRR standpoint and being involved in the research and trying to gather the data to this side of it, being an assistant principal and help bringing all those things into practice. But the report that we received from the CRR, it highlighted a couple of areas for improvement that when I came into the school, I already had an idea of some things that needed to be changed. But of course, you don't want to come in and just totally revamp things. And, you want to get a feel for everything before you go and start to move things around. So in this report, it highlighted things. I have a few here. Like one, it highlighted instruction, lesson design, and the action needed was lesson designs that include activities that promote student engagement, critical thinking, and support literacy skills that will deepen student learning. So Also, systematic process for lesson and syllabi design. So those were areas that we had that we could take back to our leadership team and start to put the wheels in motion, start to build our systems or refine our systems to ensure that we were, one, addressing those identified deficits and providing structures that would be beneficial to the school, something that's effective and efficient.
So what was that conversation like? Can you give a little bit more sort of detail into what you spoke about when you were meeting with your leadership team in terms of that CIR, or things you said, wow, I'd like to change this specifically?
Absolutely. So when we met with as a leadership team, as a leader, it's important to be honest and be transparent. And that was the way we approached that conversation. In essence, I told them, everybody is struggling. We're coming out of COVID. We need to look at this as an opportunity to get better. The best schools in the state, best schools across the nation, everybody is struggling. Everybody's looking for that new normal. So we approached it from that standpoint. And as such, people were more receptive. Nobody felt attacked. And the fact that CRR was done from a panel that was a neutral panel that didn't have much stake in the school, they bought into it more. It wasn't the administrator saying, hey, you need to change this, you need to do that. It was an independent party that came in and reviewed, talked to parents, talked to students, talked to teachers, and they put together this finding, this report that we use to drive our changes.
And then one of the changes that you made was the idea of a flex block for students. And I think, Heather, you've been one of the leaders on that project. So what motivated you to create the flex block? And we'll start with that. And then my next question would be, what is a flex block?
Okay, so just kind of piggybacking off of getting those results, it was a lot easier to make changes once we had data in front of us to say, this is what was found. These are some ways that we're going to combat that. And this is how we're going to just make everything kind of roll differently or what have you. So that did help with some changes, being able to pull up that CIR data and just say, this is what we need. This is how we're going to attack that. And really, in a lot of our early meetings that summer, that's what we did. We just pulled up the results and started ticking away at how we do this. So the origin of FlexBlock actually started after I was tasked with how we were going to do some professional development in-house in PLCs. So I wanted to come up with a way to differentiate PLCs and PD for our teachers. We talk a lot about it with students, but not so much with teachers. So I'm sitting in my office trying to figure out where I'm going to find the minutes to do this. But I'm looking at the bell schedule and I'm looking at duty schedules, and our campus is very large. It takes a lot of our faculty to be on duty in the mornings. So our kids essentially were getting off the bus and had about 40 minutes to eat breakfast, and then they could go visit a teacher, work on things, what have you. Well, if you didn't ride a bus, you were not going to be there those 40 minutes. And if you did ride a bus, you were probably going to spend the whole 40 minutes inside the cafeteria or courtyard. It just was not productive. So the question, well, can't we just start school earlier and build in a time that we meet with students for remediation, enrichment, and different things like that? So that's really where it started, is how do I find a way to differentiate for teachers? And then it kind of exploded into building a flex block system for everybody.
So this is revolutionary, right? This is not only flexing for students, but flexing for teachers. Can you talk about how it supported students, right? So you had all these big jumps in growth, how it supported students, and then how you professionally develop teachers.
So it has changed. It's morphed over the 2 years, and we have even bigger plans for next year. So I will say the first year was embrace the chaos. because that's what it is. I mean, we found a system. It's Flex Time Manager. Students can sign up for where they're going, because that was the first thing. How do we organize this? How do we figure out where kids are? What happens if somebody gets checked out? All those different things. And making sure our seat time minutes were reserved, meeting those state standards. So we introduced it for a Wednesday, Thursday, and Wednesdays are for academic purposes, enrichment or remediation, skill specific, whatever teachers felt like their students needed. Thursdays were reserved for clubs. So this is human interest clubs. These are not your traditional student council beta club. These were things like wiffle ball club, Taylor Swift club. There was a spa club. We had a teacher who was a cosmetologist in her previous life, and she had a club for that. So our whole idea with Thursday was to bring experiences in for our students and to reserve that time. So Wednesday and Thursday, flex block, about 40 minutes. And then we figured out year one on Wednesdays, we rotated PLCs. The 4 administrators led a book study during the first semester. Teachers signed up for those book studies without knowing which administrator it was tied to. And so they were able to have that teacher choice and opinion in what they were going to learn about. And we kind of figured out how many teachers we had to have operating a flex and how many we could have off. So that was kind of year one. And a lot of it was reminding students to sign up and making sure everybody has got their stuff in the system. So there were places for students to sign up. Year two, we used some survey data from teachers and students to make adjustments. Some of the freedom was too much for 7th and 8th graders. They needed a little bit more structure. And so we structured it a little bit differently for them. On Wednesdays, they didn't have as much choice. The teachers seemed a little bit happier with that. And Thursdays, we stayed the same. But even after surveying again, we were hearing a lot of things like from students that said they love it. Thursdays are the best. But then I'd have some teachers who Thursdays were very stressful. They want all academic all the time. And so a Thursday human interest club wasn't working for them. So as a team, we started talking about how could we put flex block in every day. So that's what we are looking for in 25-26. We wrote for a School of Innovation plan in Mississippi and were approved so that we could add a flex block every day. So next year we will have 30 minutes of flexible time every day. It is but after our second block, and that'll be before lunch. And that is actually what teachers asked for. So we took more survey data, and then we've continued to change and tweak it to what our teachers and our students are telling us.
So just so I'm clear, you start this day earlier, that time that you've purchased, and on Monday, Tuesdays are normal days, like traditional day. I mean, before next year, right? A Friday is not normal day. On Wednesday, there's a 40-minute block that students in the morning or at some point beforehand go into a software called, say it again?
Flex Time Manager.
They can send their check to us for this free advertisement. Nothing's free. Flex Time Manager. And they sign in and they decide where they're going to go. And on Wednesday, it has to be for academic, either enrichment or support. And on Thursday, it's for something that is going to be of high interest for each student based on teacher choice. So for students, they're going to those places. And now Jason's question was at the teacher learning. So what are teachers doing? Obviously, some of them are doing remediation, and some of them are doing Taylor Swift Club, right? Or cosmetology. But then how are they getting learning from this? How are these book clubs scheduled into that or whatever else?
So the PLCs and PDs were built in. So we figured out we needed X amount of teachers to have students and X amount of teachers who could be working in a different capacity. So once we figured that out, then teachers just don't offer a student flex block on those Wednesdays, and they have that block of time for their professional learning. Year one, we did a book study. Year two, we kind of changed it a bit. We went from having one teacher that's nationally board certified and one admin that was nationally certified to now having 7 working towards that certification. So one of the things that we did for those teachers working on national boards was say, okay, Thursdays, you don't need to offer a club if you don't want to kind of give them a 40-minute time that is dedicated to working on national boards. So we want them to know that we are supporting that. We're supporting that decision of personal growth and giving them some room to grow on their own.
So that was one specific teacher-led learning team. Were there other teacher-created or specific teacher interest learning teams that were created?
We also have our new teachers. They did not offer flex blocks during the first 9 weeks. It is a confusing system when you're new to us. We do explain it in our interviews, which I think has really helped buy-in as the years have progressed, as we have this really cool thing. You will learn about it. This is part of who we are. And so, but for first 9 weeks, we decided that our on-campus instructional coach would work with new teachers during that time. And there were a couple teachers who asked to join that were seasoned teachers. So first 9 weeks, it was specifically for new teachers, like straight out of school teachers or new to us teachers that needed some extra support. And then the rest of the year, that instructional coach basically sent out interest meeting and said, hey, who wants to be involved in this? And she kind of built that. We really wanted it to be peer developed. And she was a teacher here for a really long time. And so those connections and relationships are very strong. And so teachers chose to go to that professional learning during flex and not offer.
So it was an opportunity to grow new teachers so that they feel less overwhelmed than if they would have had to take on a flex block too, right? And pour into them a little bit. And then teachers who saw the need to support coaching advice, support from their coach eventually. It's a great support mechanism. I think it's a great way to develop students and teachers.
So the book was a lot of the PLC. Tell me about the content, about what they're learning about during those protected times. What were the expectations of a teacher to be doing during that flex block time?
So year one, the expectation was they had to choose which book study they were going to go to. And I will say, in hindsight, doing that in year one and tying one of the 4 of us up once a week, it was a lot. I think we kind of started to question that decision because it really was an all hands on deck to make sure everybody figured out the system and where they were going and how to check it. And so when we pulled ourselves out of the mix, some of those weeks it made it difficult. And so we knew pretty early on that the next year we were going to push this as a more teacher. We needed to be available during those 40 minutes. We also can't be looking in flex blocks and participating in teacher flex blocks if we're trying to lead one ourselves. And so we found out very quickly we're going to pivot the following year. That's one reason why we really pushed into the instructional coach leading those. And then looking at 25, 26, we actually have a teacher who has developed all of the first semester PD plan that she's going to operate based off of literacy during first semester. Second semester, teachers will basically apply to lead a PD and we'll have multiple ones going on at the same time. But we had a lot of conversations about we have been writing for CEUs and applying for CEUs, and we're not teaching teachers to write for CEUs and to lead these things. And so now it is, I will support you. I will help you. I will read over your planning, give my thoughts on it, but it needs to be yours. You need to take ownership, and I will help you write for the CEUs and turn in the information and do all the things, because I really want to make sure our teachers are having those opportunities to grow in any capacity that they want. If they want to be the best classroom teacher for 30 years, I want to make sure that they have all the support they need. If they want to be an instructional coach, I want to make sure that they have the experience that they need, or a curriculum specialist at district, or an administrator. We really wanted to make sure everybody had that opportunity. Some people want to go to lots of PD and they're happy that way, and other people want to learn how to give it. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. I can give both of those opportunities during one time.
I think that's really cool. I remember when I was trying to transition from a teacher to a district leader, they kept asking me what peer, they're like, we don't care about your experience with a teacher to student. We want to know your peer-to-peer experience. And I had no opportunities to get that at the school I was going to. You are providing those opportunities for teachers so that when they sit for interviews or do whatever they want to do, they have that experience. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we want to retain our teachers. We want them to,
right.
But we also want to equip them with every tool possible that they can reach whatever level they want. If it's with us or if it's beyond us, I want to make sure that they have that opportunity.
So in the past, you've been doing different books, like the 4 leaders would each choose a book, and then the teachers would choose which book that they wanted, which group they wanted to participate in. And now the teachers will take more ownership of that. And you're also modeling choice, right? That's one of the big things as a PD provider. One of the big things that people don't like is the one size fits all. And that's also for kids. And so you're modeling that, and you're giving teachers agency in what and how they learn. And you've emphasized that you value that by structuring that into your core schedule. You said you can see what a school values by their schedule. It really represents that. And so you're showing that you value, one, the kids' interests and making that part of the school culture, and teacher learning. And you've built that in there.
Hi, everybody. This is Ashley. I was editing this episode, and it's a lot of great information, but it was kind of a long episode, and so I'm actually breaking it up into 2 parts. We're going to end it right here because I think this is a good stopping point with the discussion about PLCs and flex time and the flex block, and then we're going to pick it back up. Our next episode is going to continue with Dr. Stewart and Dr. Bryan and Richland High School, and we're going to talk about the way that they boosted their AP program. They're going to talk about some things they do to get students connected to careers, and then the high expectations they set for their teachers. And so that's next episode, and it's just as good as this part, so make sure you come back and listen. All right, see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by the Southern Regional Education Board. SREB is a nonprofit dedicated to improving education from pre-K all the way to PhD and into the workforce. Visit sreb.org for resources on instructional practices, teacher data, career pathways, and more. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at SREB-School Improvement and on Twitter/X and Instagram, both at SREB Education. See you next week.